Over the years, there haven't been many athletes who have been able to compete in the UFC after lengthy absences and come out on top. While some fighters have asserted that ring rust is not a problem, many others have struggled with it, which frequently makes it impossible to win titles after a period of inactivity. However, a few individuals have shown that nothing is impossible for them. Here are 5 UFC fighters who returned from lengthy layoffs to win titles in the octagon. Number 5. Jon Jones, a former UFC light heavyweight champion. It would be Jon Jones' second time accomplishing such a feat if he were to overcome Cyril Gane for the UFC Heavyweight Championship after a break of more than 3 years. In fact, Bones defeated Alexander Gustafsson for the vacant light heavyweight title in late 2018 after spending well over a year on the sidelines, displaying zero ring rust in the process. Jones' time away from the octagon in 2017 and 2018 was entirely self-inflicted, just like his most recent absence. He recently lost his job as a result of a pay dispute with Dana White and the rest of the crew. But back then, he was thrown out of competition after USADA disqualified him for using illegal chemicals. Jones regained the 205-pound title in July 2017 after defeating Daniel Cormier in one of his best-ever performances, but later tested positive for turinabol. His positive test was his second infraction, thus USADA was keen to punish him. But after making some adjustments, Bones returned 15 months later. Despite the fact that the UFC had to transfer their entire event from Nevada to California in order to get Jones licensed, Jones' return was contentious, but no one could contest the way he destroyed Gustafsson, stopping him in the 3rd round. It will be difficult to contest Jones' overall greatness if he can perform at this level when he faces Cyril Gane in March. Number 4. Tyron Woodley, a former UFC welterweight champion. Many people overlooked it at the time, but when Tyron Woodley upset Robbie Lawler to claim the UFC welterweight title in the summer of 2016, it was the first time he'd set foot in the octagon in well over a year. Woodley's rise to title contention at 170 pounds began in 2013, when he exploded onto the UFC scene with violent knockouts of Jay Hieron and Josh Koscheck. By early 2015, he'd also beaten the likes of Kelvin Gastelum and Carlos Condit. In an October matchup between top contenders, the Chosen One was matched up with former champion Johnny Hendricks. However, Hendricks was forced to withdraw due to a weight-cutting issue just one day before their fight. Woodley became the front-runner basically by default as a result. Surprisingly, he was content to wait for then-champ Lawler to finish off Condit before attempting to achieve greatness. The last fight Woodley had, against Gastelum, had been in January 2015, or around 18 months prior to the Ultimate Title Showdown. In the end, it didn't matter. Woodley showed no ring rust, while Lawler appeared to be wearing the scars from the 2 violent bouts he'd been involved in while his challenger sat out. One big right hand later, and the Chosen One was the new champion. Number 3. Randy Couture, a former UFC heavyweight champion. No one was really shocked when Randy Couture, at 42, chose to hang up his gloves in the early months of 2006. After all, the Natural had performed astounding exploits throughout his UFC career, including twice winning the heavyweight and light heavyweight championships. Later that year, he was inducted into the promotion's Hall of Fame, which seemed like the pinnacle of an outstanding career. Nobody would have predicted that Couture would come back and compete at a high level for nearly 5 more years, winning another title along the way. Rumors of a prospective comeback started to circulate just over a year after his retirement. Suddenly, it was revealed that The Natural would not only be making a comeback but also competing against Tim Sylvia for the heavyweight championship. It seemed like an enormous task to Couture. In addition to giving up a lot of bulk to the 6'8", 265-pound Sylvia who was in his fighting prime, he had been competing at 205 pounds for the past 4 years. It appeared to be a step too far for the icon at the age of 43. Of course, everyone is aware of what took place next. In a masterful effort, Couture outclassed the main IAC across the board en route to a commanding 5-round decision victory. The victory made him the oldest fighter to ever capture a title in the octagon, something Glover Teixeira will be hoping to equal this weekend. For Couture to achieve this coming off a year on the shelf, though, was nothing short of miraculous at the time. It remains one of the UFC's greatest ever achievements. Number 2. Georges St-Pierre, a former UFC middleweight champion. Georges St-Pierre didn't officially announce his retirement from mixed martial arts, MMA, when he stopped competing in November 2013 and gave up his UFC welterweight belt in the process. However, as the months went by, it appeared that GSP was not, in fact, preparing a comeback. After all, the Canadian had held an iron grip on the 170-pound class for 7 years before he stepped down, and it appeared that he wanted a vacation. Interestingly, St-Pierre announced his comeback to action in mid-2017, just over 4 years after his sabbatical started. In addition to making a comeback, he would be lifting weights for the first time, going up to 185 pounds, to face Michael Bisping for the middleweight championship. Many supporters laughed this concept off. They asserted that St-Pierre didn't deserve a crack at the title because he had never competed at the weight, in addition to thinking he would be past it. But GSP disproved his naysayers, as he had always done before in his career. The Canadian had been out of the ring for 4 years, yet when his fight with Bisping started, he had no ring rust. Despite having a nasty cut, St-Pierre ultimately prevailed, eventually knocking the count to the ground and submitting him with a rear naked choke. When St-Pierre flatly refused to defend his newly gained title and promptly gave it up to enter retirement once and for all, it did little to advance his legacy. However, the fact that he overcame such a hiatus to win gold is still a genuinely remarkable feat for any fighter to accomplish. Number 1. Dominick Cruz, a former UFC bantamweight champion. Dominick Cruz, a former UFC bantamweight champion, is the athlete who may have made the strongest case for the idea that ring rust doesn't exist. Cruz's break from 2014 to 2016 was not at all self-inflicted, in contrast to Jon Jones, Randy Couture, and Georges St-Pierre, who choose to take a break from competition before their huge comebacks. Instead, the Dominator had a long series of problems that prevented him from competing, making him maybe the most injury-prone fighter in the history of the promotion. In fact, a catastrophic knee injury in 2011 brought a stop to his first tenure as bantamweight champion. It seemed like he was back on track when he returned in 2014 to defeat Takeya Mizugaki, but later that year he sustained further wounds. It appeared to be an insurmountable feat for Cruz to regain his title by the time he declared himself to be fit enough to return in January 2016. In addition to the fact that he hadn't fought in the previous 5 years, Cruz went up against TJ Dillashaw, the new champion, who had previously dominated top competitors better than Cruz had ever done. Surprisingly, Cruz's proverb that he wouldn't display ring rust held true. Using his mobility and feet to deceive Dillashaw, he engaged in a spectacular tactical battle that ended in a 5-round decision. It was simply amazing that despite a 14-month hiatus and numerous major surgeries, the Dominator didn't seem to have lost any ground. Cruz stands up as the best example of a fighter who came back after spending a lot of time on the sidelines to win the octagon.